I turned on the kitchen faucet at 5:47 in the morning, and nothing came out. Not a trickle, not a sputter, nothing. Just the hollow sound of empty pipes and the hiss of air where water should have been. I checked the pressure gauge on the well pump. 0. Bone dry. I walked outside in my boots and stood at the wellhead. The ground around it was undisturbed. No leak, no damage, no equipment failure. The water was simply gone. I looked across the fence line toward Summit Pines HOA. Their brand new luxury spa pavilion, the one they had built 3 months ago over my objections, over my attorney's letters, over every warning I had given them, sat gleaming in the early morning light. Water streaming from its decorative fountains. Water running through its hydrotherapy jets. Water filling its heated soaking pools. My water. I stood there for a long moment in the cold Texas morning. Then I smiled, because 6 weeks earlier, I had quietly done something Renata Holbrook and her entire HOA board had never thought to check. Something buried in a state water rights filing from 1987. Something that meant every drop of water running through that spa, every jet, every fountain, every heated pool, legally belonged to me. Tell me below. Have you ever had a neighbor steal something and not realize who they were stealing from? Drop your state in the comments. I read everyone. My name is Garrett Holloway. I am 64 years old. I spent 32 years as a licensed hydrogeologist for the state of Texas. The kind of scientist who maps underground water systems, identifies aquifer boundaries, and testifies in court about who owns what beneath the ground. I have appeared as an expert witness in 41 water rights cases. I have never lost one. I retired in 2018 and came home to the land my grandfather had farmed since 1952. 220 acres in Caldwell County, Texas. Black soil, live oak, a creek that runs year-round. And beneath all of it, beneath my land, beneath the neighboring properties, beneath what is now Summit Pines HOA, a private aquifer. The Holloway Aquifer, named in the State Water Registry in 1987 when my father commissioned a geological survey and filed the water rights documentation with the Texas Water Development Board. My father was not a scientist. He was a farmer who understood one thing very clearly. Water is not decoration. Water is survival. And in Texas, water belongs to whoever files the paperwork first. He filed it first. He left it to me, and I had spent 32 years learning exactly what it meant. My wife, Carol, teaches high school chemistry in Lockhart. Our son, Marcus, is 34, works in Austin, comes home for hunting season and holidays. Our daughter, Bess, is 31, married, 2 kids, my grandchildren, ages 4 and 6. They know the land the way children know the land when they grow up on it. By smell, by season, by the sound of the creek after rain. This is not just property. This is the place where everything that matters to me has happened. And Renata Holbrook had just turned on a spa with my water. Summit Pines HOA was built 4 years ago on the old Mercer cattle ranch adjacent to my eastern fence line. 92 homes, manicured streets, a clubhouse with a gym and a resort-style pool. And now, a luxury spa pavilion that had been under construction for 8 months and had opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony 3 weeks ago. Renata Holbrook was the HOA president, 57 years old, retired real estate developer from Dallas. She wore her confidence the way other people wear jewelry. Loudly, expensively, and as a substitute for substance. She drove a black Escalade with a personalized plate. She held HOA meetings where she used the phrase community vision the way a preacher uses scripture. She had once sent a violation letter to an 81-year-old widow for having wind chimes that were sonically inconsistent with neighborhood ambiance. I am not making that up. The first time she came to my fence line was 2 years ago. Her spa project required water. A lot of water. The municipal supply wasn't sufficient for the heated pools and hydrotherapy systems she had designed. She arrived with a civil engineer named Doug Prater and a smile that said she had already decided how this conversation was going to end. Mr. Holloway, We'd like to discuss a water access arrangement. Your well system appears to tap the same underground source our contractor has identified beneath the development. I looked at her for a long moment. That source has a name, ma'am. I'm sorry? The Holloway Aquifer, named 1987, State Water Rights Registry, filed by my father. Her smile didn't waver. Water rights in Texas are complex. Our attorney has reviewed the situation. So is mine, I said. The answer is no. She left. Her attorney sent letters. My attorney sent responses. And then, 8 months later, Summit Pines broke ground on the spa anyway. I did not sit quietly while they built. My attorney, Sandra Chu, sent 3 formal cease and desist letters over 6 months. Each one cited Texas Water Code Section 36. Each one referenced the 1987 Aquifer filing by name and registration number. Each one warned that unauthorized extraction from the Holloway Aquifer constituted theft of water rights under Texas law. Renata's attorney responded each time. The responses grew shorter and more dismissive with each exchange. The third response was 4 sentences long. The last sentence read, "Our client's water contractor has independently verified that the aquifer accessed by the Summit Pines spa system is distinct from any registered private water rights in Caldwell County. We consider this matter closed." Sandra called me after she read it. Garrett, their contractor, told them what they wanted to hear. Or what they paid him to say. Either way, they're going to build it. And when they turn it on, then we'll have something concrete, I said. You're going to let them finish. Sandra, I've been a hydrogeologist for 32 years. I mapped this aquifer myself. I know every extraction point, every flow rate, every pressure indicator on my property. The moment they pull water from that spa system, I'll know exactly where it came from, down to the gallon. Silence on the line. Then, "You've been waiting for this." "I've been prepared for it," I said. "There is a difference. I spent the next 2 months installing monitoring equipment, pressure sensors on my wellhead, flow meters on the main water line, a data logger connected to my laptop that recorded extraction volumes every 15 minutes. Carol watched me run cables from the well pump to the garage one Saturday morning. "You're building a trap," she said. "I'm building a record," I said. "Same thing." She handed me a cup of coffee and went back inside. She has always understood me better than I understand myself. The ribbon cutting was on a Saturday. I watched it from my back porch with binoculars, not because I'm that kind of neighbor, but because I needed to document the exact time the system went active. 10:23 a.m. Renata cut the ribbon. Champagne was poured. The fountains came on. The jets started. The pools began filling. On my laptop, the data logger registered the first pressure drop in my wellhead at 10:31 a.m. 8 minutes after activation, I watched the pressure numbers fall in real time. Not a dramatic crash. A slow, steady, unmistakable decline. The kind of decline that a hydrogeologist recognizes immediately. Controlled extraction from a shared source. By noon, my well pressure had dropped 14%. By the following Saturday, 1 week of spa operation, it had dropped 31%. I called Sandra. "It's them." "You're certain?" "Sandra, I designed the monitoring system myself. The extraction rate, the pressure gradient, the flow vectors, they match the spa system's location exactly. There is no other explanation." "How long until your well is affected operationally?" I looked at my data. At current extraction rates, 6 weeks, maybe 8. And then? And then my well runs dry, which is exactly what happened this morning. Silence. "Garrett, it's been 3 weeks since the spa opened." They accelerated, probably added the hydrotherapy circuit last week. I saw the plumbing contractor's truck 3 days ago. "What do you want to do?" I looked out the window at the empty wellhead, at the dry faucet in my kitchen, at the horses in my back pasture who needed water by noon. "I want to do exactly what my father taught me to do," I said. "Which is?" "File the paperwork. The Texas Water Development Board keeps records going back to 1917. Most people have never looked at them. Most HOA attorneys have never looked at them. Most civil engineers hired by HOA developers to say what their clients want to hear have definitely never looked at them. My father looked at them in 1986. He had farmed this land for 30 years and watched 3 neighboring properties sell to developers. He had watched those developers drill wells without asking anyone's permission. He had watched the water table drop 2 feet in 5 years. So he hired a hydrogeologist, the same firm I would later work for as a young man, and commissioned a full aquifer survey. The survey identified a closed-basin aquifer system beneath 1/400 acres of Caldwell County. My father's land sat directly over the primary recharge zone. In 1987, he filed a prior appropriation claim with the Texas Water Development Board. Registration number TWD 1987 CWEWW0441. The Holloway Aquifer. Registered capacity 847 million gallons. Annual recharge rate 12.3 million gallons. Primary rights holder Thomas Edward Holloway and successors. That last part. And successors. That was me. Sandra pulled the full filing the morning after my well ran dry. She called me at 7 a.m. Garrett, I need you to understand what this document says. I know what it says. I don't think you understand the full scope. This isn't just your well. The aquifer boundary on this filing covers the entire Summit Pines development. Every well on that property, the clubhouse, the pool system, the spa, the residential irrigation lines, they're all drawing from the Holloway Aquifer. I poured my second cup of coffee. I know. Garrett, they haven't just been stealing your water. They've been building an entire community on top of water that legally belongs to you. Every resident's tap, every sprinkler system, every toilet flush in 92 homes. Draws from my aquifer. Long silence. What do you want to do with this? I looked out at the dry wellhead, at the horses, at the cedar fence line that had stood since my grandfather built it. I want to file for an emergency cease and desist on all extraction from registration number TWD 1987 CW0441, I said. That would shut down every water source in Summit Pines. Yes, 92 families. They have a municipal connection. It's undersized but functional. Nobody goes thirsty. They just lose the spa, and the fountains, and the decorative pools. And Renata Holbrook loses everything she built. She built it on my water, I said. I'll file this afternoon, Sandra said. While Sandra filed the emergency motion, I started making calls. The first was to my former colleague at the Texas Water Development Board, a hydrogeologist named Phil Garrett, who had worked in the Caldwell County District for 20 years. Phil pulled the Summit Pines development file. What he found took him 3 days to fully document. He called me on a Thursday evening. Garrett, their development permit application from 4 years ago, the water source documentation, it lists the spa system as drawing from a municipal connection. They told the county they were on city water. For the spa, yes. But the actual installation, I've got the contractor's as-built drawings here. They drilled a private well, 80 feet from your property line. No permit for private extraction, no aquifer impact assessment, no notification to adjacent water rights holders, which they were required to do, and didn't. So they lied to the county on the permit application. That's the charitable interpretation. What's the uncharitable one? Fraud, Phil said quietly. They knowingly misrepresented their water source to obtain a development permit. I wrote that down. Fraud. Unpermitted private extraction. Failure to notify adjacent water rights holders. Theft of registered water rights. Sandra added them to the filing one by one. The folder was getting very heavy. I requested a formal meeting with the Summit Pines HOA board. My right as an adjacent property owner with a pending legal action. They agreed. Probably because Renata thought she could manage me face-to-face the way she had managed everything else, with confidence and a smile and enough legal language to make a reasonable person doubt themselves. The meeting was on a Wednesday evening in the Summit Pines clubhouse. The room smelled like new carpet and expensive coffee. Renata sat at the head of the table with 4 board members and Jeffrey Marsh, their attorney, a man in his 40s who had the look of someone who charged $400 an hour and had never once been wrong about anything. I sat across from them with Sandra Chu and Phil Garrett. I set a single folder on the table. Renata smiled. "Mr. Holloway, we appreciate you coming in. We understand there are some concerns about the water situation." "There are no concerns," I said. "There are facts. Would you like to hear them?" Her smile held. "Of course." I opened the folder. Texas Water Development Board, registration number TWD 1987 CW 0441, the Holloway Aquifer, filed by Thomas Edward Holloway in 1987, inherited by Garrett Thomas Holloway in 2003. The aquifer boundary covers all 1,400 acres of this grid section, including the entirety of the Summit Pines development. Jeffrey Marsh leaned forward. "Mr. Holloway, aquifer boundaries are subject to—" "Phil," I said. Phil Garrett opened his own folder and slid a document across the table. "A certified geological survey, current, commissioned 30 days ago, showing the aquifer boundary in precise contour lines, showing the Summit Pines spa well location, showing the extraction vectors, showing a red circle around the spa well with the words, 'Unauthorized extraction, Holloway Aquifer.'" Marsh picked it up slowly. "Furthermore," Sandra said, her voice calm as a closing argument, "your development permit application listed the spa water source as municipal connection. The as-built drawings show a private well. That is a material misrepresentation on a county permit application." Renata's smile had not moved, but something behind her eyes had. Our contractor advised, "Your contractor drilled an unpermitted well 80 feet from my client's property line and fraudulently documented it as municipal supply," Sandra said. "We have the permit application. We have the as-built drawings. We have 37 days of extraction data from my client's monitoring equipment. We have a certified aquifer survey. And we have a filing with the Texas Water Development Board for emergency cessation of all extraction from registration number TWD 1987 CW 0441. All extraction," Marsh repeated carefully. "Every well on this property draws from the Holloway Aquifer," Phil said. "The spa, the clubhouse, the pool system, the residential irrigation network." Silence. The kind of silence that fills a room when people begin to understand the true dimensions of a mistake. "You're talking about shutting off water to 92 homes," Marsh said. "I'm talking about enforcing registered water rights," I said. "The residential connection to municipal supply is undersized but functional. No one loses drinking water, but every unauthorized extraction stops, including the spa." Renata set her pen down. "What do you want, Mr. Holloway?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I want what was taken from me returned. I want the spa decommissioned. I want a formal water rights agreement that compensates me for 37 days of unauthorized extraction. And I want a public acknowledgement from this board that the Holloway Aquifer is private property and will be treated as such." "And if we refuse?" Sandra answered for me. "Then the Texas Water Development Board enforces the cessation order. The county opens a fraud investigation on the permit application, and we file a civil suit for damages that will make the cost of that spa look like a rounding error." Marsh looked at his legal pad. He had stopped writing. They didn't agree that night. Renata said she needed time to consult with the board. Marsh said there were legal complexities requiring further review. Jeffrey Marsh said a lot of things that Wednesday evening. None of them were yes. So Sandra filed the motion the following morning. The Texas Water Development Board moved faster than I expected. 14 days after filing, a state water rights inspector arrived at Summit Pines. He spent 2 days on the property. He reviewed the permit application. He reviewed the as-built drawings. He reviewed my monitoring data. He reviewed Phil's aquifer survey. On the 15th day, the board issued a cease and desist order on all extraction from registration TWD 1987 CW 441 within the Summit Pines development boundary. Effective immediately, I was sitting on my back porch with my morning coffee when my pressure gauge registered the change. The extraction stopped at 9:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. My well pressure began recovering at 9:31 a.m. By noon, it had recovered 40%. By the following morning, it was back to baseline. The spa fountains, I am told, stopped midstream. The hydrotherapy jets went silent in the middle of a Tuesday morning session. The heated pools began cooling. I did not see any of this. I was at my kitchen table watching my pressure gauge climb back to where it belonged. Carol set a cup of coffee beside me. She looked at the gauge. "It's coming back," she said. "It is," I said. She put her hand on my shoulder and didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. The civil investigation opened within 30 days. Caldwell County reviewed the development permit application alongside the as-built drawings. The finding was clear. Summit Pines Development, LLC, had materially misrepresented the water source for the spa facility on their county permit application. The developer, not the HOA, but the original development company that had built Summit Pines 4 years ago, was found liable for fraudulent permitting. They settled with the county for $340,000 in fines and remediation costs. The spa was decommissioned. The unauthorized well was capped and sealed by the state water inspector. The decorative fountains were disconnected from the aquifer system and rerouted to municipal supply at significant cost. The heated pools were drained. The hydrotherapy pavilion, Renata Holbrook's pride and vision, and the centerpiece of every HOA newsletter for 8 months, was closed permanently. A chain-link construction fence went up around it 2 weeks after the order. It is still there as of today. The civil suit settled 4 months later. My damages claim covered 37 days of unauthorized extraction at the established Texas water rights market rate, plus punitive damages for the fraudulent permitting, plus legal fees. The settlement number was $218,000. I want to be clear about what I did with that money. I kept enough to fully restore and upgrade my well system with modern equipment. The rest, $190,000, I donated to the Caldwell County Rural Water Assistance Program, which helps low-income farm families maintain their private water systems. My father would have approved. Renata Holbrook lost the HOA presidency in the spring election. She received 11 votes. A retired county engineer named Dale Fitch received 78. Dale's first act was to commission an independent water rights audit of the entire Summit Pines property. His second act was to send me a letter. It read, "Mr. Holloway, we owe you an apology and a proper introduction. I'd like to start over as neighbors if you're willing." I wrote back the same day, "Dale, I'm willing. Come by on Saturday. I'll have coffee ready." He came. We talked for 3 hours on my back porch. He turned out to be the kind of neighbor this land had always deserved. The night the settlement was finalized, Carol and I sat on the back porch after dinner. The creek was running. The live oaks were black against a purple sky. The horses were quiet in the pasture. Water running through my pipes again, the way it had run for 70 years on this land. Carol held her tea in both hands and looked out at the dark. "Your father knew," she said. "Knew what?" "That this would happen eventually. Not this, exactly. But something like this. Why else does a farmer in 1987 hire a hydrogeologist and file a water rights registration? He wasn't a scientist. He wasn't a lawyer. He was a man who looked ahead." I thought about that, about my father walking this land in the 1980s, watching the developers circling, watching the water table drop, filing his paperwork at the Texas Water Development Board with careful, deliberate handwriting. And successors. He had written that clause himself. He had thought of me before I was old enough to understand what an aquifer was. He knew someone would try eventually, I said, and he made sure you'd be ready when they did. The creek ran cold and clear in the dark below the pasture. My water, his water, running the way it had always run. The Holloway Aquifer holds 847 million gallons. It recharges at 12.3 million gallons per year from rainfall and creek seepage. At current usage rates, it will sustain this land for another 400 years. My grandfather farmed it without knowing its name. My father named it and protected it. I spent 32 years learning to measure it. Someday my grandchildren will drink from it. That is what water rights mean in Texas. Not a legal technicality, not a paperwork advantage, a chain of custody across generations, a promise one farmer made to the ones who would come after him. Here is what Renata Holbrook never understood. She looked at my land and saw an obstacle. She looked at my well and saw a resource she could redirect. She looked at me and saw a retired old man who didn't understand how development worked. She never once looked beneath the ground. She never once asked whose name was on the water. In Texas, in most of the American West, the most important document you will ever read is not the deed to the surface. It is the record of what flows beneath it. Check your water rights. Know what your land holds. Keep your father's paperwork. Because someday, someone with a spa project and a confident attorney is going to tell you that the water under your feet belongs to them. And you are going to want to have something to say about that. If this story hit home, if you've had a developer or an HOA take something that ran deeper than property lines, tell me your story in the comments. Your state, your county, what they took. I read every one. Some of them become the next script. And if you want to hear about the HOA in the hill country of Tennessee that built a luxury clubhouse on a family cemetery, and the 71-year-old widow who had the original deed recorded before the county was even incorporated, hit subscribe. That one goes up next Friday. Thank you for being here. From the land, from the water, from the record that was filed in 1987 and never forgotten.